Helm, bring her up. Surface.
Aye, aye, Captain. Blowing main ballast, coming to periscope depth.
At the bottom of the world, the map lies. Antarctica is a vault, weather-built, silence guarded.
Approaching target, getting ready for the drop.
Miles of ice press on heat, rivers moving in the dark, rooms no planet should hold. We came for science and tidy lines, treaties, corridors. But the ice keeps its own history. Doors without hinges, walls that light themselves, symbols no museum can name. Satellites listen, instruments whisper. The continent refuses to answer.
This is weird.
So we follow warmth and tunnels, put steel to ancient winter, and wait for it to blink. Truth won't be announced, only found, quietly, behind a door not meant for us. Antarctica doesn't just resist you, it edits you. It strips down your senses until only the essentials remain. Breath, heartbeat, horizon. A land bigger than the United States, smothered under ice up to 3 miles thick. A place where the map looks finished, but the story is not. Scientists call it a desert. Explorers call it a crucible. People who've worked there quietly call it something else. A vault. And vaults are built to hide things. We've long suspected the ice conceals labyrinths of subglacial lakes and rivers, an entire underworld in motion beneath the white. Heat from below, pressure from above, and water that moves in the dark. Volcanoes sleep there too. Mount Erebus with its restless lava lake. Deception Island, a caldera you can sail into. Heat makes voids. Voids become rooms. But the human layer is harder to see. Restricted corridors. Logistics that steer you away from certain coordinates. A treaty that keeps the guns out and the secrets in. Antarctica is both sanctuary and stage. And what the world is shown is only the opening scene.
What has been unfolding for me since 2017 have been whistleblowers that have been coming from a variety of directions, but the two most significant have been U.S. Navy SEALs. I know their background, I've seen their documents, I know photos, I know places that they have been. And when one sits in front of me as I'm going to share and says,
I have seen photographs of bodies of humanoids that are based in Antarctica.
And that what he has seen with his own eyes 2 miles down under ice are hieroglyphs that archaeologists that he was in, that was the mission, was a scientist had been in there studying all this ancient archaeology 2 miles down under the ice.
2 SEALs, 2 missions, years apart. Same geometry underground, rooms the size of neighborhoods, 9 acres carved from dense black basalt, walls covered in symbols, a little Mayan, a little Egyptian, and exactly like neither. Same photographs, same conclusion whispered from different lips, not human.
They're describing exactly the same kind of architecture. Black basalt. He said that the archaeologist compared thousands. We're not talking a few symbols. We're talking whole walls, 40 feet high, completely covered with symbols that the archaeologist says are somewhere in between Mayan and Egyptian and are neither. And that they took an instrument and they penetrated where all these thousands of symbols are, and they all go in 7 centimeters, which is about 3.5 inches. But they're thin, they're carved into this dense black basalt on an even 7 centimeters. And the seal said to me, in discussing with the scientist, we can't even comprehend how you would do this unless there is something that interacts literally with the molecular level of the basalt and turns it into these very refined, evenly deep symbols.
The archaeologists tried to measure the impossible. Thousands of glyphs, each cut to a uniform depth, as if the stone's molecules had been told to part in perfect patterns. No tool marks, no scaffolding, no supports holding up those vast ceilings. If the story is right, the engineering is the message. Antarctica was once tropical, forests and warm seas proven by pollen locked in stone, until something changed roughly 34 million years ago, and ice rose like a curtain over an entire world. If structures exist beneath that curtain, whoever built them knew what was coming, or planned to outlast it. Getting into Antarctica is hard. Getting under Antarctica is something else. Routes are everything. Sea ice openings, crevasse-free plateaus, covert corridors no tourist will ever see. Traveler researchers talk about the continent like it picks its visitors. Calderas that steam, beaches warm enough to walk barefoot where the sea breathes through the crust. At Deception Island, black sand smolders and the water runs oddly warm, a gateway made of fire, not ice. If there are voids beneath, heat is the natural architect. Some point to no-fly sectors near the pole, and manufactured-looking entrances cut into mountain faces in New Schwabenland, an old claim from a different century. Some of it is speculation. Some of it is artifacts and imagery that fuel late-night arguments. But taken together, the idea is simple. Go underground to stay unseen.
What do we do now?
We need to find a way in.
They came in on an aircraft carrier, launches a helicopter. The helicopter goes to McMurdo. They get on half tracks. They go up toward the Beardmore Glacier, and that is the jump off to how they get to this deep underground through an octagonal structure.
The logistics make military sense. McMurdo, carrier, helicopter, half tracks up the Beardmore Glacier, an octagonal doorway into the ice, then down, deep. The architecture doesn't feel terrestrial, but there's another way in.
The other Navy SEAL who was there in 2012, he's the one who came in under on a submarine to this 2-mile deep entrance. And he said that it was astonishing that as they come out, most submarines, if they're that deep, there has to be some sort of a decompression airlock thing. And he said the whole structure, they came in on the submarine, and when they move, just like the SEAL from 2004, 3-4, the walls move with you with light, that the temperature stays between 68 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit, that they have looked for the energy source. They cannot find anything that has wires. There's nothing that we would recognize, and yet
A submarine route beneath the ice. Much of Antarctica's bedrock lies below sea level. Ice rivers and briny channels snake unseen for hundreds of miles, carving space and carrying heat. A vessel could ride those conduits into the continent's interior. Water moves down there, silently. The planet itself makes the tunnels. You only need to know where to look.
Hold depth. Ride the river.
At the South Pole, an array called IceCube listens for particles from deep space, using a detector a kilometer on a side, frozen into the ice at abyssal depths. Officially, pure astrophysics. Unofficially, rumors of dual use. The official story and the whispered one run in parallel like tracks in snow. A curious mind might want to ask the obvious question. With the capacity to detect energetic particles using this observatory, as well as ANITA, the balloon-borne radio antenna array, did the military detect something far more interesting than it should have? What kind of builder removes the supporting columns from a 9-acre room? What kind of engineer tells stone to carry a load it should never support? If the whistleblowers are genuine, the structures behave like programmable matter, self-stabilizing, self-lighting, temperature-regulated, resisting ice pressure on a planetary scale.
He said, when you realize that you're in a place, I'm walking, that's what Spartan 1 told me. He said, I am walking, it takes me 15 minutes to walk from one end of one room to the other. This is how big the structures are. And he said, you have light that is moving with you, you have this even temperature, you're looking up at ceilings and there is no structure that is going up. And they are maybe 33 to 34 million years old. These structures would be what our government has described in extraterrestrial investigations for a long time, self-activating software. That we are dealing with advanced intelligences that know how to take a wall, put in at the atomic level programming, just like we would do software in a computer, only they're doing it with structure.
If you can soften gravity inside a volume, a roof is just a suggestion. If your walls can think, light becomes a behavior, not a fixture. If your symbols aren't carved but instanced into matter, then history isn't chiseled, it's compiled. We've heard legends of hidden enclaves before. New Schwabenland tunnels, masking on satellite images, symmetrical cave mouths that look too perfect to be natural. You don't have to prove the legends to see the pattern. Where secrecy accumulates, infrastructure tends to follow. Rift zones, calderas, and places where ice pulls apart are exactly where you'd expect voids to persist. And of course there's Operation High Jump, the vast U.S. Navy expedition of 1946 to 47. Officially a cold weather playbook, training, logistics, a base. Unofficially, it became a magnet for speculation. We won't dwell on it. The important part is what it reveals, how much strategic attention the ice has always commanded.
When you would walk into these big 9-acre rooms, they can't see supports. So imagine that you're in a 9-acre room and you're looking, there's a ceiling, but there are no supports. He said that he was in a space and they knew by measurement of what they were doing from satellite that the ceiling was at least 80 feet high, no supports. Both SEALs tell me the same thing, that the conclusion is that the very material of which the ceilings are made is neutralizing gravity. self-activating software neutralizing gravity. It's not something that the human mind is used to seeing or even comprehending.
This is the part that gnaws. We can see under the ice now. Radar, satellites, seismic networks, our instruments are precise. So if there are rooms, entrances, symbols, someone is mapping them. If the public story is the surface, then the classified story is the basement. But secrecy cuts two ways. Sometimes it hides there's nothing. Sometimes it hides there's everything.
When you ask the question, when was the last time that Antarctica was free of ice? The consensus in terms of geophysics is that you have to go back to at least 34 million years ago. There was a period around 14 million years ago where it might have heated up and become drier and then gone back to ice. But the big division is 34 to 33 million years ago. And what had been happening for the previous 70 million. That is the disconnect from Pangea, when all of the land was all hooked together, and a portion that became this roundish Antarctica starts coming down for at least 70 million years, moving south. The whole time, for at least 70 million and probably longer. The entire moving Pangea continent that we know as Antarctica was tropical. The pollens, the seeds, it's all tropical, high temperature land. Until, and it's a huge mystery, what happened between 34 million and 33 million years ago. And that is when ice began rapidly to build up to 2 miles and in a few places 3 miles on this round continent.
Let's say the ruins are real. Let's say they're older than the ice. Older, perhaps, than our species. What changes? First, the timeline. Antarctica's freeze at roughly 34 million years pushes us into deep time. If the structures predate the ice, we're looking at builders who engineered for geologic horizons. The story doesn't become Atlantis. It becomes planetary engineering. Second, the biology. Life adapts under the ice in strange brines and buried lakes. Blood falls bleeds iron-rich water from a pressurized, microbe-laden reservoir sealed inside a glacier. Lake Vostok, entombed under more than 2 miles of ice for millions of years, has yielded tantalizing microbial signatures from accretion ice. Life likes edges, and Antarctica is a continent of edges. Third, the cosmic context. At the South Pole, IceCube turns the continent into an instrument, listening to neutrinos that slip through planets like they're not even there. If ruins exist beneath that detector, then our search for the distant universe sits atop the oldest evidence of visitors to our own. That's poetry, or irony, or both. The politics complicate everything. The Antarctic Treaty keeps the guns away, but it also keeps the gates. It centralizes access, permits, logistics, and storytelling. Maybe that's good stewardship. Maybe it's a velvet rope. Or maybe it's both. On the ground, heat and rift lines suggest plausible voids, places where caverns could survive eons of pressure. At the human level, maps exist that we don't get to see, corridors you won't find in a brochure. If military planners have them, and they surely do, then the continent is stitched with hidden lanes. Someone could ride them right up to an octagon in the dark.
We had this meeting in December of 1999. It went on for 7 hours. And he said, my job, working for the Defense Intelligence Agency for 23 years, so 99 minus 23, was to monitor and analyze the conflicting competition of 3 extraterrestrial biological civilizations in conflict with each other on and apparently over something about this planet. In that context, in talking to me, he said these words: "Linda, our government has proof that 3 competing extraterrestrial civilizations have been using this planet as a laboratory for genetic manipulation for at least 270 million years." I asked him what the proof was. He said it would be too dangerous for me to tell you. And I said, well, 270 million years is before the time of the dinosaurs. And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, one of the 3 competing groups made the dinosaurs as an 80 million plus year long experiment. And he said, the part that bothers us, we think it was the ebens, the ones with the heads that are shaped like this and a pear-shaped chin, not this, but more this. He said, the ebens have demonstrated for us, meaning humans, in DIA, CIA, NSA, military, and intel, that they can move matter in this universe into another dimension or another timeline, and they do it all of the time. He said 66 million years ago, something was headed for this planet that was 6 miles in diameter. We call it an asteroid. Was it an asteroid? Were they responsible for it? He said, because it is that 6 mile wide, what we have called a scientific analysis, that it must have been an asteroid piece, 6 miles in diameter, and it plunges into what we call the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of the Yucatan and makes the Chicxulub crater. That's our evidence. He said, we just can't understand. That took out 95% of surface life on Earth, including all of the dinosaurs. If this was their experiment, they could have moved that 6 mile diameter object into timeline or another dimension, and there never ever would have been any collision. Mm-hmm. And he said, so what bothers us? What else can we conclude? But they did an 80 million plus year experiment, dinosaurs. And then, is this the way they ended it?
If Linda's sources are accurate, the origin question isn't really a question to the people down there. The archaeologist didn't see chisels. The SEALs didn't see scaffolds. They saw function masquerading as stone. The word extraterrestrial gets spoken as diagnosis, not myth. But origin is only half the riddle. The other half is purpose. What do you build 62-acre facilities for? Multiples of them. Under a continent you know will freeze. Archives, power, transit, or something stranger. Habitats in geologic standby, waiting for a climate trigger to peel the door open again. If the symbols Linda describes match markings seen elsewhere, Mars, the moon, if they do, and we emphasize if, then Antarctica isn't an endpoint. It's a node in a system we barely perceive. That doesn't prove anything. It complicates everything.
The key to understanding this planet, the non-human intelligences that have warred with each other over this planet, it's a laboratory. He said, it's my understanding so far there are not many planets like this. We're 2/3 water, deep, deep water. with land that was congealed. That's what Pangaea and Gondwanaland was about. And then over a period of time, because of dynamics with the geophysical interior of this planet, that the lands began to break up and go into the separate lands that we know. But if there are competing civilizations that move their way through the Milky Way galaxy and the universe by collecting whatever is the genetic material of life forms so that they can make it in cloned containers that they then can use to put themselves into any planet, anywhere, camouflaged by that life form, then one of the biggest treasures. It's hard for humans to think about this, but when you get to this bigger picture, the biggest treasure would always be retrieving genetic material that could be preserved to make clones for whatever would be the reason. And that man that night, December of 1999, said this planet is considered a laboratory. It has perfect conditions, and these conditions do not exist everywhere. Three competing, these were his words, three competing extraterrestrial biological civilizations conflicting in this planet, all of them doing genetic experiments. Would that explain why, in the evolution of standing up primates on Earth, that if you go back, say 35, 45,000 years, and you come to the overlap with Neanderthal, one of the questions he posed, he said the Ebens said that they are surprised that there are 5 main different races, because they did, this was the quote, they didn't start their experiment out to end up with 5 different genetic populations. So how did that happen? And his answer to me in December of 1999 was, we are beginning to understand that in the competing civilizations, they will do genetic manipulations in the same populations of a preceding group. And therefore, none of the 5 or 3 that would be involved in the beginning would have complete control over what had happened. They started experiments, other things came, and he was basically describing for me that night. I remember driving back to Philadelphia from where I had traveled, thinking, we are on a planet in which humans war and kill each other over the color of their skin, whose God is superior to another's God. And what that man just revealed to me on December of 1999 is that all of these differences were set in motion by competing extraterrestrial groups, and we humans are left in the dark, not only by those genetically manipulating, we are left in the dark by our own human power brokers.
So what do we do with a secret that big? We ask better questions. Why is so much under Antarctica? Heat, water, life, and maybe architecture. Why does a continent that feels like the end of the Earth keep pointing us outward, to neutrinos from distant galaxies, to symbols that suggest company? We resist the urge to narrate certainty where we don't have it. We hold the tension between data and testimony, between official sites and whispered routes through ice that moves and thinks like a slow ocean. We push for transparency under a treaty written for peace, remembering that peace and secrecy are not the same thing. And we let Antarctica do what it does best, test our patience. The ice gives up secrets slowly, but it does give them up. New lakes mapped this year will be old news the next. Instruments grow sharper. Melt lines creep. Somewhere out there, a door is becoming visible. Maybe the first civilization here wasn't human. The question is whether we're ready to meet the landlords, or ready to realize we've been tenants all along.
The disconnect between the power brokers, the politicians, and the governments that have allied themselves or aligned themselves in policies of denial and lies since World War II at least, from a population around this planet in two hemispheres, in which every year people are encountering lights, beams, sometimes entities in their house or their farm, animal mutilations. And we are living then on a planet that is totally concocted. Everything about this is now concocted. The past mythologies, even past religions, are part of a kind of theatrical explanation for what the truth is, that this planet, this solar system, this moon, Mars, and beyond, as that man said to me that night, December of 1999, our planet has had 3 competing extraterrestrial civilizations for at least 270 million years.
Fast forwarding to current findings, let's look at what the ANITA balloon detected. The Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna has pulled off the unthinkable. It registered radio pops not from space, but from deep under the ice, climbing at steep angles that shouldn't exist. They contradict the standard model. They overturn expectation. ANITA was built to catch ultra-high energy neutrinos, phantom particles that slip through whole planets without a sound. But even those evasive messengers can't emerge from Earth's crust with the punch ANITA recorded. Here's the sting. This has happened more than once. Crisp, upgoing signatures, captured not a single time but repeatedly. And when researchers tried to cross-check the events with IceCube, the vast neutrino detector entombed beneath the South Pole, they found nothing. Silence. As if the signals slide past every ordinary account. One audacious proposal, that they're sterile neutrinos, a hypothetical particle that doesn't couple to matter or light as we know it. Others invoke CPT violation, a fracture in the symmetry of time and space itself. But there's a different possibility, one that isn't theoretical, one you won't find in the textbooks, and that's where the whistleblower enters. A former Raytheon contractor, the defense behemoth running key infrastructure at the South Pole, has come forward with allegations that escalate this mystery to the next tier. In a recorded interview, he outlines a site operating under stacked layers of secrecy. Yes, there are researchers. Yes, there are weather sites and neutrino labs. But there are also no-go sectors, night operations, and equipment drops that didn't square with the manifest. He recalls sealed, unmarked cargo hurried under polar storms with unusual urgency. Personnel were ordered to remain inside. External cameras were blanked out. The explanation? Routine upgrades. But the timing? Lined up precisely with ANITA's detections. Something shifted after those signals, he said. Suddenly, sectors were restricted. Flights got rerouted. Civilians were cycled out. I've held high clearance contracts before. That wasn't science. That was military. He alleges that personnel from unidentified government branches wearing no insignia, arrived and worked in units apart from regular researchers. He overheard references to directed energy systems, geophysical scanning, and, strangest of all, a program nicknamed simply the Vault. Some dismiss these assertions as conspiracy-fueled fantasy, but others remain unconvinced. Because across history, Antarctica has been ringed by secrecy and myth. Ancient charts, like the Piri Reis, seem to portray the continent centuries before its formal discovery, including details of an ice-free shoreline. But for now, most of humanity will remain in the dark until the ice reveals its greatest secrets, and perhaps even the origin of mankind.